This lesson will actually be a guided answer key from yesterday's rectangular prism nets and surface area practice. So the first thing we want to do is we see that we have a bit of matching. So we have to match the nets with its corresponding three-dimensional rectangular prisms. So we see we have choices A through H. So the first thing we want to do is go through and label each of the different sides for our rectangular prisms. So I'm going to start off with A, and I'm going to recognize that I have a base, B. And really we have two bases, or you can also say that it's the top and the bottom. Okay, in addition to the bases, we also have the front and the rear. And then we have two sides, and we can call it the left and the right side. Okay? So recognizing that with each rectangular prism, we can rotate that around. And we could look at the different sides as either the bases, front, rear, sides. So we have many options there. And we're going to look at that a little bit further. Okay, for B, again, we have our two bases. We have a front, rear, and two sides. C, two bases, front, rear, two sides. Take a look at D. Now I start by looking at this and saying, okay, well, here's a base, but then the only side that matches it is right next to it. So this is not a rectangular prism at all. That's not the net for a rectangular prism. So we're just going to go ahead and eliminate that. That we don't even need. Makes things a little bit easier. So now we look at E, and we have, again, base here and a base here. We're going to call this the front and rear. And then these are going to be our two sides. And again, don't worry about which ones that you labeled. Just make sure that you've identified them. Otherwise, when it comes time to match it up to its three-dimensional shape, you won't be able to recognize it. And then for H, we're going to take this as our base. These are our sides. Okay, and then this is going to be, this should be our rear. I'm going to take this as my front. And then these as my sides. Okay. So now we're going to go through. And for number one, I see that I have a rectangular prism that has a base of 5 by 2. Okay. So I'm going to look through and I need to find a base that is 5 by 2. So we can count these boxes and see where do I have a base that is 5 by 2. And if we look at it, F has a base of 5 by 2. In addition, we have to check to make sure that it meets all the other criteria. So in addition to having a base of 5 by 2, the sides are 2 by 2. And the sides for F are also 2 by 2. And then finally, we look at the top and bottom, the front and the rear, and those are also 5 by 2. All right, so that is definitely a match. So for number one, we have F is our corresponding net. Okay, now to find the surface area, again, what we want to do is either find each of these individual sides and find their area and then add them all up. But we learned from looking at our composite figures, we could also take this entire area as one area. And then to that, add these two smaller areas, and we have our total surface area. Now, either way that you do it, you're just going to combine all of those. In the case that I used, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that is this larger area. I'm going to go ahead and shade that in so we can see what that looks like. Okay, so that's what I'm finding the area for. Okay, that's 5 by 8. Quick calculation tells me that's going to be 40. And then I have these two sides. These are 2 by 2 sides. So for area, 2 times 2, 2 by 2, is going to be 4. Now remember, there's 2 of them, so I have to add another 4. So the total surface area, when I combine all those areas, or area of the now totally shaded region, that's going to be 48 centimeters squared. So that's the way that we're going to calculate the surface area for each of these. Okay? For number 2, I'm looking for a base of 6 by 3. And we look through and looks like B has bases that are 6 by 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 1, 2, 3. All right, but we have to make sure that meets all the criteria. Looks like it has sides that are 3 by 4, and these sides are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then the front and rear are 6 by 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so number 2 has a net that is B. Again, we're going to find the surface area following the same concept. I'm going to shade that in first. Go yellow this time. So I can find the area of this larger rectangular region, and then I'm going to find the area of these 2 smaller ones. Okay. And then I just have to add those all up. Area of a rectangle, don't forget, base times height, length times width, however you want to say it. Okay. So after we combine those, we get 108 centimeters squared. Okay. Number 3. Okay, for number 3, we have a base of 3 by 4. All right, so a base of 3 by 4. Looking around, okay, D is definitely out. It looks like here I have, for E, base of 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a match so far. But we also need to make sure that this has sides that are 4 by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then a front and a rear that are 3 by 5. And that's 1, 2, 3 by 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's it. We found it. Now take a look at this one. When I find the area, I'm actually going to find the area of this rectangular region first. Okay? And then to that, I'm going to add the other ones. Now, could we have done it the other way, where we, let me just show you. If we would have found this area and then added the other 2 areas, we could have done that, but to me, it just seems like it might be a little easier to find the orange shaded region first and then the yellows and then combine those. Okay, again, there's no wrong way to do that, or you could have found the individual 6 areas and then added those up. Okay, it's just about what's easiest for you to follow. Okay, so for me, we forgot to put, we know this is a match for E. And then after you add up all of the areas, you're going to get 94 centimeters squared. Okay, number 4. I'm going to scroll down a little. All right, so it looks like we're looking for a 5 by 10. So obviously this has to be pretty big. So right away, should catch your eye that H looks like it could be it, but we got to check it out. So we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sure enough, looks like it might be right. But again, we have to check all of the dimensions. So the bases match. Okay, it has sides that are 2 by 10. And the side is 1, 2 by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oops. All right, and then front 2 by 5, rear 2 by 5, and sure enough, checks out. We have a match. Again, to find the surface area. So, just like I did in number 3, I'm going to find as big of a rectangle as possible. To me, it just makes things easier. Okay, and then to that, I'm going to add these smaller rectangles. And that's how I'm going to get my total surface area. Okay, so after I add up all of those areas, again, using whatever technique you want, and I guess technically you could also count up all of the boxes, although that might take you a while and could lead to errors. We get a total surface area of 160 centimeters squared. Now, number 5. Number 5, we're looking for a 2 by 3 base. Okay, so that looks pretty small. And looking around, looks like I have really one option, and that's C. Again, we need to make sure that matches 2 by 3 for the base. 1, 2 by 1, 2, 3. That's a match. And then we have front and rear. That is 2 by 2. Now, take a look at this one. So for what I've labeled as the front and the rear, those don't match. Okay? But again, it's just about the way that you orient your box. Okay? We could stand it up on its side. We can flip it sideways. So we can go ahead and change that. And now we're going to call this our front and rear and our sides. Again, it still has to match what we have, but let's see if that works. So we still have a base of 2 by 3, so that checks out. Okay, we have a front and a rear of 2 by 2, that checks out. And we have to have now sides that are 2 by 3. And that checks out. All right, so now we know we have a match, and that's C. Okay, we're going to shade in. Again, I'm going for the biggest area possible, and then add in the smaller areas. Or count all the boxes, or add up each of the individual areas of the sides. And again, no matter which method you use, you're going to come up with 32 centimeters squared. For number 6, looks like we have a base of 3 by 2. So again, I'm going to look through, not many left. So it looks like I have a choice of A and G. All right. So again, we're looking for something that is a base of 3 by 2. So when I look at A, okay, I see also one of the other dimensions here for number 6 is 6 centimeters. And although this has 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the problem is I don't have those 2 centimeters, that dimension, anywhere in A. So it can't be A. So I go to G, and I see that I have 3 by 2. I do have 3 by 2, but I've labeled them as the sides. So again, we're going to have to go back and we're going to have to relabel. Okay, the way that this drawing for number 6, that 3-dimensional shape, is oriented, it looks like these would have to be the bases. Okay, so now if those are the bases, that means we have to change what we've labeled before. And if that's the base, now that's going to be the, change all those. Okay, this is going to be the front. This is going to be the rear. And these are going to be our sides. Okay, so now let's check that out. Let's make sure this matches. So if I have a 3 by 2 base, and again, we've already checked that out. means we have to have a front and rear that is 3 by 6. 3 by 6. And then finally, we have sides that are 2 by 6, 6 by 2, matches. Okay? So again, with these rectangular prisms, keep in mind that you can rotate this thing. We can rotate it that way. We can flip it forwards, backwards. So there's many things that we can do. So we can look at it a few different ways. All right. So now let's get to the calculation for the surface area. Oh, let's make sure first that we recognize that G is our match. And then our surface area, again, let's take the biggest one possible, which would be this area first. Okay, and to that we're going to add these other smaller areas. Okay, so we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have a 6 by 10 rectangle. That's easy enough. That's going to give me 60. Okay. And then I have two smaller areas. I have 1, 2 by 1, 2, 3. So that's just going to be 6. So don't forget I have not just one, but two smaller areas that I have to add together. And when I add those together, I have 72 centimeters squared. Okay, so now on the next page, it looks like we are starting with the nets and then we have to match it to the rectangular prism. So just like we did before, if you have the nets, what you want to do is you want to start by labeling them and then see what we can match it with. So for number 1, we're going to take this as our base. Okay. We're going to take this as our front, rear, and our two sides. Now, when we look at it, add all of the, or count all of the sides, it looks like we have a 5 by 5 by 5. Okay, as a rectangular prism, if you have 5 by 5 by 5, that's actually considered a cube. All right, so we're looking for a 5 by 5 by 5 cube. And sure enough, E is a 5 by 5 by 5 cube. Now, to find the surface area, we don't need the three-dimensional shape. In other words, we wouldn't look at this. We can just look at our net. And just like we did on the previous page, we're going to take the area of the larger rectangular shape and then add these two smaller. Okay? So after we've done that, we add up our area. We have 150. Now the units that we need from the drawing, that is inches. So that's going to be inches squared. On to number 2. For number 2, we have base, base, front, rear, side, side. For number 2, looks like we have a 3 by 4 by 5. Okay, for number 2, we're looking for a 3 by 4 by 5. Looks like choice B. Okay, for the surface area, again, shaded. Add those up, and we get 94 centimeters squared. Okay, next up, number 3. Okay, for number 3, we have base, base, front, it's kind of hard to write in there, rear, side, side. Okay, for this one, we're looking for a 4 by 4 by 1. Okay, this is a 4 by 4 by 1. So we look around, and looks like D might be the choice. Okay, so we have to count up the dots in this case. We don't have cubes, we have dots. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let me actually switch to a different color just so it's a little more obvious. So 1, 2, 3, 4 units by 1, 2, 3, 4 units. Okay, so that meets the 4 by 4, and then it has to be 1 deep, and it is. Okay, so this meets what we need. Switch back to red. Okay, again, for surface area, nice big region here, and then 2 smaller regions. Okay, again, we could have done it any other way, or just do the 6 individual sides and add those up, and we get 48. Now this one, we're not provided any units of measure, so we just say that's units squared. And then finally, number 4. Okay, we're going to call these sides and front and rear. So it looks like for number 4, we have a 3 by 5 by 2. All right, now 3 by 5 by 2. Looking around. Okay, it looks like A is our choice. 3 by 5 by 2. Okay, now again, the surface area. That's a little sloppy, I apologize. I'm going to reshade that. Okay, now I'm going to go over the calculations for this one, since it's our last problem. So first I'm going to find the area of the red shaded region. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that is a 14 by 1, 2, 3. So 14 times 3. Okay, that's how we're getting that area. So 14 by 3, that's going to give us 42. Okay. Now the area of the orange, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 2. So 5 by 2, that's easy, that's 10. Don't forget there's 1, 2 of those. So I have the second one. Okay, I add those up, 4, 5, 6, and I end up with 62. Unit of measure for A is meters squared. Okay, so this is how we find our surface area and match our rectangular prism nets to our 3